Sunday, 9 a.m., Seoul. The morning sun in Seoul, usually scorching, felt surprisingly mild, filtered through the lush trees lining the courtyard of a grand, classic Victorian mansion. The majestic silence was suddenly broken by the smooth purr of a sleek black sedan as it glided to a halt right in front of the main steps. The car door opened, and two figures stepped out. Choi Yunho, a sharp-featured 25-year-old man dressed in a crisp shirt, and Choi Yn, a sweet-faced 19-year-old girl. They were welcomed with a warmth that stood in stark contrast to the mansion's cold luxury. Standing in the doorway was Kim Taehyung, the mansion's owner and Yunho's peer. He greeted them with a gentle smile and soft, warm eyes. The athletically built man was Yunho's best friend, and starting today, he would be acting as In's temporary guardian. Taehyung, Yunho called out as he approached, his right hand tightly holding In's, as if reluctant to let go of his only prized possession. Taehyung, I'm leaving Yn in your care for the next 3 days. Yunho said, his tone laced with apologetic hesitation. I promise I'll wrap up my business trip out of town as quickly as possible. I'm sorry to trouble you again. Being her only brother, Yunho was always plagued by anxiety whenever he had to leave Yn alone. Because of this, whenever work took him out of town, Taehyung was the only person he trusted completely to look after his little sister. Taehyung let out a soft chuckle, patting Yunho's shoulder with the easy familiarity of a brother. What are you talking about? I don't mind at all having Yn stay here. I've told you 1,000 times, don't be so formal with me. Your sister is perfectly safe with me. Now, you'd better get going before you miss your flight. Yunho smiled in relief. He felt incredibly grateful to have a best friend he could rely on more than anyone else. Alright, I'm off then. Thanks, Taehyung. I owe you one. He turned around, looking down at his sister, who was looking a bit downcast. Yn, Oppa is leaving now. Remember, behave yourself. Don't give Taehyung Oppa a headache, okay? Yn immediately pouted, puffing out her chubby cheeks adorably. Hey, when am I ever bad? I've never given Taehyung Oppa a headache. She whined, trying to defend herself. Watching the sweet interaction between the siblings, Taehyung suppressed a fond smile. Her pouting face never failed to warm his heart. Haha, alright, my bad. Yunho gave in. Well, Oppa is leaving now. He gently kissed In's forehead, gave her a tight hug, and then hurried back into the car. Once Yunho's car vanished from sight, Taehyung guided Yn inside the mansion, leading her past a grand living room illuminated by a luxurious crystal chandelier. Have you eaten? Taehyung asked softly, his hand brushing through her hair. It was an affectionate gesture that, unbeknownst to her, had begun to hold a different meaning for him over the past year. I have, Oppa, the teenage girl replied, flashing a sweet smile that always managed to melt Taehyung's heart. Taehyung smiled fondly. Adorable, he whispered softly, more to himself than to her. In that case, you can just watch TV here. Oppa needs to check on some work in the study first. The sweet girl simply nodded obediently, her eyes instantly locking onto the giant television screen in front of her, browsing through cartoons or teen dramas. An hour slipped by. The clicking sound of Taehyung's keyboard, which had been filling his quiet study, suddenly ceased. Knock, knock, knock. Taehyung looked up. Standing in the doorway was Yn, her lips jutting out in a clear sign of boredom. What's wrong, baby? Taehyung asked, his voice instantly softening. I'm bored, Oppa, and sleepy, Yn whined in a spoiled tone as she walked over to him. Without a shred of hesitation, Yn walked straight toward Taehyung's executive chair. She climbed right onto his lap, leaning her body against him and burying her face into the crook of his neck, seeking his warmth. Taehyung froze, his heart suddenly hammering wildly against his ribs. He swallowed hard as he became acutely aware of In's smooth thighs exposed right in front of him. She was wearing a knee-length skirt that had ridden up when she sat down. Over the past year, Taehyung had realized a significant shift in his feelings. The subtle tug he used to feel toward his best friend's sister had blossomed into a genuine, undeniable attraction. He liked this innocent, naive girl, and physical closeness like this was severely testing the limits of his self-control. What do you want to do then? Want to take a nap? Taehyung asked, doing his best to sound casual. Unconsciously, his hand began to caress her thigh with immense gentleness, a movement that was comforting to her, but intoxicating to him. I'm sleepy, but I don't want to sleep. I just want to watch you, Taehyung oppa, she said sweetly, her voice sounding like a soft whisper against his ear. Taehyung gave a bitter smile, trying to distract his racing thoughts. Or do you want oppa to call Daye so she can keep you company here? Daye was In's classmate who also visited the mansion often. Yn shook her head quickly. No, Lee Daye is out getting a VA9. T test, she said completely innocently, leaving Taehyung stunned, bewildered, and utterly shocked. A VA9. T test. Taehyung gasped, his eyes wide with disbelief. Yeah, oppa, I don't even know what kind of test that is. Do you know? Yn asked innocently, tilting her head up to look at Taehyung, her round eyes sparkling with pure curiosity. Taehyung tried to process her words. Why on earth is your friend getting a VA9 test? He asked, completely bewildered. I don't know. Daye said her boyfriend asked her to do it, Yn replied, her voice filled with absolute, harmless innocence. That crazy girl, Taehyung thought to himself, inwardly cursing whatever Daye's boyfriend was pulling. Oppa, Yn called out again, her tone growing a bit more pressing. What is a VA9 test, anyway? Is it mandatory? If so, I want to get one too. Her innocent face looked straight at Taehyung, completely expectant. Taehyung froze on the spot. Suddenly, he felt the entire wall of self-control he had spent the past year building completely crumble. Yn, the innocent girl he loved, was saying something so incredibly br0th3r cative, testing his sanity while wrapped tightly in his embrace. This situation was turning out to be far more complicated than he had ever imagined. Oppa, why are you ignoring me? Yn pouted. Taehyung snapped back to reality. Yes, sweetheart. He stammered. You haven't answered my question yet. In's lips jutted out a few more centimeters. Taehyung stared at her in silence. Her innocent charm mixed with his desperate urge to maintain boundaries was driving him over the edge. However, the desires he had suppressed for the past year, combined with In's incredibly intimate position on his lap and her naive question, felt like a bursting dam. When he spoke, his voice was deeper, raspy, and thick with restrained emotion. It's not mandatory, sweetie, Taehyung said, letting the term of endearment slip out completely unfiltered. Yn might not realize the implications, but Taehyung knew exactly how much that word meant to him. But if you really want to know, oppa can help you. Yn blinked, her large eyes shining with naive curiosity and anticipation. She didn't pick up on the tense vibration in Taehyung's voice at all. You can do a VA9 T test, oppa. How do you do it? Yn asked with pure enthusiasm, her eyes locked onto his as if she were asking about a difficult math formula. That question, uttered in extreme innocence, completely shattered the last remnants of Taehyung's defense. God, this girl is going to drive me insane, he thought. Taehyung could no longer think straight. All his worries about Yunho, their friendship, and morality were entirely swallowed by the sudden wave of desire dominating him. Do you really want to find out? Taehyung asked back, his voice dropping to a deep whisper. He needed to hear her confirmation one more time, even though he knew she didn't fully comprehend what she was asking for. The innocent girl nodded eagerly, her bright smile showing just how much she trusted him. Yes, I want to. Taehyung's gaze darkened with intensity. He looked at the girl he had been secretly in love with, the one sitting so close to him, offering herself up in beautiful ignorance. This was the critical moment, the turning point that he knew would change everything. Taehyung placed his hands around In's slender waist. Slowly, he guided her off his lap. After clearing away the important files scattered across his desk, he lifted Yn and sat her down on the wide, cool surface of the mahogany executive desk. Her legs now dangled over the edge, and her short skirt rode up even further, exposing a view that only worsened Taehyung's sweet torture. Taehyung's breathing turned shallow and heavy. His eyes were glued to In's face, which was now clouding with a mixture of confusion and an unfamiliar sensation. His large hand found the skin of her thigh, sliding upward, past the hem of her skirt, until it brushed against her row of V∝T∝ Yn winced, the innocence in her eyes now mixed with a sudden wave of discomfort. She felt Taehyung's hand touching an incredibly RER. Oppa, why are you taking off my E∝ She asked, her voice small and timid, her lips pulling into a cute pout. Taehyung took a deep, steadying breath, trying to suppress the roaring fire inside him. He had to keep his voice sounding reassuring. You have to take them off, sweetie, Taehyung replied, his voice heavy and strained. If you want to do a V9T test, there shouldn't be anything in the way. Oppa needs to check everything very carefully. Taehyung managed to slide off In's thin, pink E∝ tossing them completely out of reach. For a moment, Taehyung's eyes widened. Right in front of him was a sight he was seeing for the very first time. She looked incredibly soft and pristine. The entire area was a bright, flush pink, like an untouched flower bud. Her scent, a blend of floral perfume and sweet lotion, wafted up immediately, making Taehyung catch his breath. His already rigid length hardened even further. Oh, I see, Yn murmured, accepting his explanation with total innocence, completely unaware of the massive impact she was having on him. So, how does the test work, Oppa? Yn prompted again, genuinely curious about the process Daye had gone through. Like this. Hold still for me, Taehyung said, adjusting his position to get closer. Taehyung's long, firm index F∝ slowly brushed against the surface of her F∝, which was slick with a nervous sweat. Yn flinched, a small shiver running through her beta-0D. Taehyung paused for a few seconds, waiting for her reaction. When Yn remained still, he decided to press on. With extreme, agonizing care, Taehyung began to slide his F∝ inside her. He could feel just how incredibly T9 she was, a definitive, undeniable proof that the girl in front of him was completely pure and untouched by anyone else. It hurts, Taehyung Oppa. Yn whimpered, her entire beta-0D tensing up instantly. Tears began to well up in the corners of her beautiful eyes. Taehyung froze. He pulled his F∝ out of In's now wet, burning warmth. Immediately, he reached out, lifting her off the cold surface of his desk and pulling her securely against his chest. Yn was still panting, trembling slightly from the foreign mixture of sharp pain and a sensation she had never experienced before. Shish, it's okay, sweetie. Don't cry, Taehyung whispered softly, rubbing her back. The test is over. My Yn is still a V9. Taehyung's heart was hammering against his ribs, not from exhaustion, but from a soaring rush of adrenaline and desire. He looked down at his F∝, still coated in her slickness. A wave of guilt washed over him, but it was instantly drowned out by an overwhelming sense of satisfaction and dark obsession. You are so soft, baby. Next time, I'm going all the way in, Taehyung promised himself in silence. Yn looked up, her tear-brimmed eyes locking onto his. Really, Oppa?